Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Kerbal Space Program. Today we are starting things off with a little bit of a rescue mission. So in between episodes, I selected some contracts to save some people that are currently in orbit around the moon. So right now we are approaching our first person that we can try and save here. If I can slow ourselves down to match their speed, that would be great. But I figured I would do some of these because I wanted to try and get better and better at doing the orbital connection things. So the only way to do that is to run these over and over again and get better and better at them. So I figured, why not? And let's see, is this going to slow us down all of the way? Let's not go too fast. And ooh, there we go, 0.2. So all we got to do now is get over to them, although I want to say we can cheese this, because if we go to that vehicle, we can just have this person leave it and then float them on over to our spacecraft, which is only 300 meters away. So that is how we are going to do this. There's no way I'm going to be able to pull my spacecraft all the way down here to try and actually rescue this person. So let's just do this. And all we had to do was zoom on over to our rocket and board it. If I can find the door, it's on the bottom of our rocket right now. That's probably not a good place to have it. I want to go up and connect to the door, please. Let me grab. Let me grab. Let me grab. Thank you. All right, so there is one out of the two down. That was Lovin Kerman. That's pretty cool. Let's see where our secondary guy is. Our secondary dude is going to be this guy that is way out there. So I need to readjust our orbit and try and make our thing a little wider so that we slow down, because yeah, our connection points are way across from each other. But for anybody curious, the spacecraft that we're using right now is the same one from last episode with a couple minor adjustments. So I went ahead and threw a couple RCS thrusters on this thing so that I can go forwards and backwards and not just side to side. And I also cut off the lander. There's no point in bringing that thing. And then swapped on a big parachute. I think I also took off two of the drag chutes as well. So that's pretty... Oh, I guess also the service bay. We don't have any science on here. This is purely a capsule to pick people up and then go back. So we have one of the two. I'm going to try and get ourselves to where we can get the other one, and we should be heading on back to Kerbin in just a minute here. Alrighty, well, I feel like a bit of a dum-dum here because all of last episode I did not realize that all we had to do to slow ourselves down to our target was to put ourselves on the retrograde marker on our nav ball. So I didn't bother doing that all of last episode. Right now, the only reason that we caught up to this guy right now was because I put ourselves on our pink marker, thrust it until our target speed was like 100 or 200. We caught right back up to him, and then I put ourselves on a retrograde and stopped ourselves completely. We seem to be catching up to him still, but again, there's no reason to actually dock with this guy. So I'm going to transfer over to his spacecraft, and we're just going to jetpack on over like we did with the other guy and get him out of the area. So that just flung our camera around. That's probably not good. Why did it do that? That's not looking too good. Let's try and catch back up to this thing. We want to try and... Ooh, let's... Oh, no. Why does that keep happening? Stop it. We want to make sure we grab this thing. Looks like we're going to miss it a little bit. Let's go this way. And, okay, we're fine. We caught up to it. We slowed down by hitting it. Our guy didn't die, so I will take it. Can we please gain control? Thank you. Alrighty, well, with our second person on board here, we can go ahead and burn our way back to Kerbin. So let's see if I can even do that. We are kind of messing up our orbit a little bit, but that's fine. We don't need to go back into orbit around this place. And that is going to launch us on over into an orbit around Kerbin. So let's speed up some time here and get flung away from the moon. Oh, that's too fast. Uh-oh. Well, I think we skipped the day, potentially. A little bit there. Yeah, that was probably not great that I just zoomed that far ahead. My bad. Anyways, though, we just got to re-land, so I'm going to do that real quick. It's not really too fancy. This thing should make it through the atmosphere and land relatively easily, since it's literally the same spacecraft that we tried last episode. I just about killed everyone on re-entry on accident because I time warped a little too much. It warped me right into the middle of the atmosphere, and I got control of the spacecraft with like 2 to 3 seconds to spare before we had everything start blowing up and potentially killing our astronauts here. So luckily enough, we landed and we got our stuff done here. So we did get science from something. I think that was from the contract, maybe. Yeah, I think so. Or no, that just says to orbit the moon and come back. So we got science for that. All right, that's cool. Our parts don't really matter, although we did make more money back on that than we did with the the other moon mission, oh, I guess the lander, right? The lander probably counted a lot of that profit. So that's probably why last episode we only made like $2,000 back, but this time we only made 4,500 back. So it's not too bad. And then on the crew, we should have these two Kerbals joining our astronaut thing. So that's cool. We have an engineer and a scientist. So we can mount multiple missions now with multiple scientists and stuff going as well. Can I change their clothes? I cannot. I guess they're going to be wearing white. Oh, I can change their clothes. Hold on. I didn't realize we can do that. Well, we only have a couple options to choose from, so I'm going to go with the orange one. I think that's going to be a little easier to see in space. The white one's not too bad either, but I want to have them in orange. I think it looks a little bit better. So that guy's in orange already. This guy should be in orange. There we go. I'm going to go through and set them all up real quick, and then we can start setting up our next missions here. So what I want to do today is actually send out some unmanned missions. So right now we have 153 points, so there's not really anything that we want to get. Probably this, actually. Let's unlock this, because then we can use this to make a nose cone around our satellite that we're going to be sending out, or an unmanned drone thingy that we're going to be building. So I want to make a couple of them, and I want to send some out and about. So I want to send one over to... What is that orbit? Oh, it's one of the contracts that's available for us to take. Okay, we don't care. But I want to send one over to Minmus, and then I want to send one out over to either one of these asteroids that's circling us, or I want to send it as far out as we can. So potentially either Duna or inward toward the sun to Eve is what I want to try and do. So I want to launch 3 of them. Hopefully I can have all 3 of them the same build out, so that way we don't have to spend too much time making multiple rockets. One of them should be able to get up and out pretty consistently and hopefully get us to all of those objects, but I'm going to potentially be sending out 3 of them today. So the satellite itself is going to be very similar across all 3 of them, because we don't really have all that much stuff unlocked just yet. But anyways, I'm going to get to work building out our satellite that we're going to be using across all of these missions, as well as the first launch vehicle. And then once we launch that first one, we can see how much fuel we're wasting or how much more fuel we need to do the things that we're trying to do here. So it's going to be a test run, the first one, and then from then on out, we should have things kind of dialed in. But anyways, let me get to work here. I'll be right back with you guys. Alrighty, well this is going to be our first satellite launch of today, but it's not going to be one of the 3 that I had planned. This is purely going to be a test run as well as an attempt to complete a contract. So during this test flight, I'm going to see whether or not we need more thrust to get us out of the atmosphere. Hopefully these 3 engines are able to do that, as well as checking to see whether or not we need a separator between the shroud and the satellite itself. Right now there is one, so once we separate the shroud, if it separates the whole thing, then we're good. If it doesn't, then we do need that separator, I think. But anyways, let's go ahead and power up and launch this rocket. I can't help but notice that we don't have any of our maneuver nodes, so that's not a good start to this mission. Let's launch it, and we don't have enough thrust. All right, well that's a good sign. Attempt number 2 here with some extra thrusters on the side. Is that going to be enough? That is still not enough. Wow, okay. This is not that heavy. I guess because we're using these massive tanks, there is a lot more weight than I'm used to because I've not used these tanks before. And attempt number 3 went exactly the same way the other ones have gone. So I think what I'm going to do is swap out these tanks to the ones that I normally use instead of these massive ones because they are quite heavy apparently. Alrighty, well, a much smaller and cheaper rocket. Let's see if this is able to go or if we're just going to drop. We are moving, so I will take it. We are going very, very fast already, or actually gaining speed faster than we probably want to. I'm not really a fan of all this shaking either, so that's probably not good. Is anything going to blow up? Probably. I didn't realize I had to probably strut the rocket boosters here. I thought they would be all stuck together, but that does not seem to be the case. And how are we looking on power generation right now? We are still holding steady at full power because these guys are generating power for us. But once we lose these engines, we are not going to be generating power anymore because of the engine that I went with over there, which should be fine because we have a bunch of solar panels on this thing, so the solid boosters basically took us out of the atmosphere, just about there, so that's great. We are losing steadiness very quickly there by not putting those things on the rocket here. That is pretty cool looking. All right, just hold together, that's fine. Yeah, no, oh, it blew up. Okay. That's fine. That is fine. That gives us an ability to at least test this real quick. So deploy this, and then it looks like we still need to decouple from this thing regardless, so yeah, it's a good thing I guess we put that there, so that's cool. And if we do action group, is that going to deploy all these solar panels? It is not. Well, at least this test run kind of helped us with some stuff here. So I'm going to revert back to launch and throw some struts in between those rocket boosters because that was a little wonky. Hopefully attempt number 5 goes a little smoother and not as shaky, and it's already looking much better. So we can actually throttle down our engines just slightly because there's no reason to have them going as fast as we were. All right, well, this first stage was able to get us into orbit, so that's great for us. I want to decouple that thing. I also want to open up our solar panels real quick because we are dropping power a little quicker than I want to. Anyways, I'm going to position this satellite real quick to complete our contract, and then we are going to start launching our own to the places that we wanted to send them to. I was a little worried that we didn't have enough fuel on this satellite to get it into the orbit that they wanted, but we are just barely off right now, so we have the fuel to fix this, hopefully. But one thing that I am noticing, which I don't know if that's going to matter, is the orbit is pulsating going around clockwise, and currently we are orbiting counterclockwise, so I hope we don't have to flip our rotation. If we do, we might have enough fuel for that. We have a secondary little stage with a little bit of fuel on it as well, so if we do need to use that, we can. But let me go ahead and finish this off here. We are just about done with it. Well, I totally didn't just spend the last 45 minutes trying to match our orbit to the contract specifications, only to then realize that the reason it wasn't completing was because we had to flip our rotation around. So the little light bulb that we saw rotating around on the orbit was to tell us that it wanted us orbiting that direction. So that fixed it, and it immediately completed the contract as well. So before we teleport back to the Space Center, I want to actually set some of the science stuff in motion because we might as well get some of this stuff for ourselves. So let's do a material study if we can, and we get 37 science, but it looks like like we're only going to get 18.4 for this. So I'm going to do all the things that we have on here and then hopefully transmit all this stuff back to Kerbal and get a little bit of science from this mission as well. And how exactly are we supposed to complete that contract? Because nothing popped up when we came back here, although it is completed already. So I think we had 68 science when we started that contract, and it also looks like that satellite is still orbiting, so I thought it would despawn when the mission was done, but it didn't. So right now, you know what we can do before we send another satellite out? We should still be able to use some of the science stuff on here. So this thing, can we reset it? We can. Can we run another one? And yes, we can. Okay, so we're not going to do that, just in case it only has so many uses. I'm not sure. So I was going back through and resetting the experiments, but it doesn't look like we actually sent the science to begin with. So if I transmit data now, nothing is actually going to go through because I just reset all of these things. So I'm going to redo the science real quick and then send it and then see if I can reset the containers. So it looks like we do break the module once we send data back from it. So we want to try and make sure we're getting the most science from this thing before we start transmitting the data back, because they're only going to be a one-time use. The only way to repair them right now is to have a scientist come out and do that, which is not going to be happening because they're not going to be very close to Kerbal once we get everything up and running. However, though, this little test flight has helped us dial in some things. So our launch vehicle is good. It got us up into orbit without any issues. And then this fuel tank is going to have more fuel in it when we do an actual mission, because we used the majority of this to get ourselves into this wonky orbit that the contract wanted us to get into. And we're also going to be throwing a battery on the satellite as well, just to give us a little bit more charge, because transmitting the data is pretty heavy on electrical charge and the solar panels can't really keep it charged up constantly to keep the transmission flowing. Alrighty, well, I went ahead and made the adjustments to our satellite, and I've also sent all three of them into orbit around Kerbal already. So I'm going to select our first one here, and all three of them pretty much have the same amount of fuel left over in their main stage here. So what I want to try and do is get a grav assist from the moon to fling us out into the solar system. So the moon is that away, so we are, I think, this one. And so we want to add a maneuver here, and let's see if we can get an assist to fling us. Oh, that's too much. That's not what we want. We want to go back a little bit and see if we can get an assist to fling us out into the solar system here. So that's going to be kind of helpful, not exactly what we want. So for the first satellite here, this is the maneuver we're going to attempt. In 4 hours, we have a slingshot maneuver across the moon that is then going to fling us into an exit trajectory from Kerbal. And I don't know exactly what that's going to do because we go way out here past the Minmus moon as well. So maybe this first one is going to be used to go to one of these asteroids maybe, or potentially even Eve. I don't really know. We'll kind of try and figure that out as we're going here. All right, well, hopefully we don't hit the moon, and we swung by it. Good. So now we should go on this yellow path, I hope. And yep, we are on the yellow one. Good. Well, it looks like that trajectory is going to be throwing us into an orbit around the sun right now. So from there, we can try and make a connection point with Eve, and that's exactly what we're going to do. If we don't have a connection point with that, we can try and get to Moho. The only thing with that is Moho is on a weird little like orbit that's not really straight on, so that might be a little more difficult to do, especially since we don't really have all that much fuel. We have a tank and then a little tank to go, so we're gonna try Eve and see how well that works out. I'm gonna start messing with some maneuvers and maybe we get something to connect here. I don't want to spend too much time on this one satellite because then the other two are going to be orbiting Kerbal for like years at this point, so I want to get back down there. I want to set a maneuver and see if that's gonna work, and then I'm gonna teleport back to the other ones and set those in motion as well. So we'll come back to the satellite once we have the other two in position, because we have to orbit a few times before we have a connection point with Eve, and I don't really want to float around for that long having the other two not doing anything. So I'm gonna go back to the other ones and set them in motion as well. So with our second and third satellite, I'm going to change plans just a little bit here. I was going to send one on over to Minmus as well as the asteroid belt. I'm no longer going to do that. This one right now is going to get sent on over to Duna. If I can get some grav assist going on, that would be great. And then the third one is going to get flung out and hopefully have a connection with one of the 3 exoplanets out here. The only reason that I'm even attempting to go to one of those ones right now is because our third satellite has just a little bit more fuel in the main stage compared to this one and the first one. So I'm going to try and set up a maneuver to get a grav assist from the moon again, and then I'm going to set this one in motion, switch to the other one, and fling that one out as well. So I'll be right back with you guys. Well, I seem to have made a bit of a mistake with our satellites here, so I can no longer control them at the moment, and I thought by having the antenna on there we would be good, but that's no longer the case because the second that we left Kerbin's orbit, we lost connection with it. So all three of these things are kind of just floating dead right now. I hope that they are going to continue orbiting, so that way later on we're able to set up a relay station and potentially regain control over the satellites here and actually use them for what we were trying to do. But right now for today, that is actually where we're going to be wrapping up today's episode. I don't have time to relaunch another mission or do anything else right now, but next episode we are going to mount a manned mission on over to Minmus, gather up some more science, and hopefully be able to unlock the relays. So for today, that's going to be it. So I hope you guys enjoyed as always, and I will catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching.